20 years since I buried my daughter in Fort Bragg's Main Post Cemetery and left my abusive husband. Almost 10 years ago, I started to write down my deepest thoughts, feelings, and experiences from my teenage years all the way to adulthood as a way of coping with the loneliness and isolation that is all too familiarly felt by those not only those still in abusive relationships, but also those who have left. As with anyone who has experienced relationship abuse, you remember everything. Every act of violence, every cruel word, every scar, what made you cry, where you were, and what you were doing when these things happened. Initially, these thoughts were written for 4 reasons. As a way of coping with the loneliness, isolation, and grief from losing my daughter. 2, I wanted something to pass down to my children so they would have a better understanding of what happened to me. 3, that my children would use my experiences as a guide to help them in their lives. And 4, to finally let go so I can move on. With the exception of the only friend I had while living in North Carolina, no one, including my family, really understood what I went through. When I tried to reach out for help to report the abuse, the military justice system labeled me a troublemaker and didn't believe me. The legal system called me a liar and jeopardized the safety of me and my children. The mental health system labeled me with borderline personality disorder and joined the legal system in jeopardizing the safety of me and my children. The medical community patched me up and sent me back home to my abuser. My own family refused to believe me and told me my place was with my husband. And my own church condemned me, telling me that what happened to me was God's punishment for my sins. These thoughts, feelings, and emotions in graphic detail have turned into what you now hold in your hands. When I made the decision to publish this book and include actual documents as well as excerpts, I wanted the military justice system to know what the daily reality of someone being abused by an active duty service member is like. The legal system to understand that there is more to addressing the issue of domestic violence and abuse than whoever gets to court first and has the most money wins. The mental health system to see how their decisions and diagnosis without appropriate follow-up severely impacts the lives of the victim and his or her children long after the case is closed. The medical community to see that the number of bruises and broken bones that pass through their emergency rooms are more than statistics. The religious community to realize that you have to heal the body before the spirit. People whose loved ones are in an abusive relationship to recognize the signs of the type of severe depression that leads to suicide and to understand that family support is crucial in the healing process. Parents of teens who are dating to recognize the red flags of an abusive relationship, and anyone who is currently in an abusive relationship or has left an abusive relationship to know that you are not alone and you can and will break the emotional and psychological chains that bind you. Just a few years ago, I founded My Life, My Soul, the unspoken journey of life after domestic abuse, to raise awareness and foster a better understanding of domestic violence, as well as raise awareness about teen dating violence. When I have been invited to various events to talk about domestic violence and abuse, I have been emotionally and spiritually moved by the scores of men and women who have been brave enough to share their story with me. As a former member of an organization that advocated for the rights of women and children, I came in contact with women who, as of a few years ago, had similar experiences. I have seen domestic violence laws evolve and change over the years, all designed to protect the rights of women and children. Yet 32 million men, women, and children have experienced some form of physical violence, including sexual, emotional, psychological, financial, or spiritual abuse. Some of those 32 million Americans have even lost their lives as a result, and I will call them the real victims. In teen dating relationships, females aged 16 to 24 are more vulnerable to intimate partner violence than any age group. What is even more astounding is that 54% of parents admit they haven't spoken to their teen about dating violence. Why is this happening? I believe that despite new laws being created to protect those who experience relationship abuse, a lack of coordinated resources, gender bias, and prejudice is what enables millions of men, women, and children to fall through the cracks like my children and I did. Without help from any of the systems designed to help those in abusive relationships, I had no other choice but to pull myself up by my bootstraps and move on, because I didn't want to spend the rest of my life being angry, feeling isolated, and ashamed of what happened to me. I wanted to be free from the emotional, physical, and psychological chains of my abuser and move on to an improved way of living and a better quality of life for me and my children. Deep down inside, a part of us wants to be happy and fulfilled. That healthy part of ourselves has been buried under years of neglect, abuse, criticism, and other destructive forces. Change is never easy, and it's always easier said than done. But a conscious effort to change has to be made in order to know how enjoyable life can be after leaving an abusive relationship. With inner strength and help from my higher power, I have learned to let go of the negativity in my life that weighed me down so I can move forward in a positive direction. Despite my physical and psychological scars, I have learned to love myself, embrace what has happened to me, and hope that others can learn from my experience. For anyone who has experienced abuse, surviving is not the first part of the journey. Telling yourself you are a survivor is. Your life and your soul depends on it.